Rush Duels is in a little bit of a honeymoon phase with rituals. It is the newest summoning mechanic introduced to the format, so it does make sense that our products focus on them for the time being. And honestly, there's no better time to get into it as well. The Magician of Black Chaos structure deck is a powerful and cheap purchase to get a strong meta-contending deck. Or, at least it was. And many of the newest sets have one or two ritual themes sprinkled in as well, which have been pretty fun to play with. But we can't forget about the Tribute Summon, the tried and true method of getting big monsters onto the field. If we didn't have that, I feel like we would lose some of the identity of Yu-Gi-Oh itself. So today's video is going to be about the newest structure deck introduced to the game, Triumphant Return of the Monarchs. This is a deck that, well, focuses on the Monarch archetype in Yu-Gi-Oh! If you're a returning player, you probably already know about the Monarch cards, majestic yet destructive emperors that only continue to grow in power as the duel goes on. In fact, Monarchs have a few structure decks in the advanced format as well. We already have a bunch of Monarchs in Rush Duel, most notably the main attribute Monarchs all being legend monsters, and some Rush exclusive Monarchs. But they never really stood out like they did in the main game. However, with this new deck and new support, it might be time to see these ancient rulers reach even greater potential. Hello everyone, my name is Protagonist, you can call me Protag, and I'm back with another episode of Rush Review. This is a series where I go over decks and themes to help introduce them to people who might want to learn about Rush, or for those who might want to try something new. There's been a lot of talk that now with Magician of Black Chaos being nerfed thanks to the most recent Forbidden Limited list, Monarchs are now in a strong position to take the throne. So let's meet these conquerors and see what they can do, then we can be introduced to the retainers, those that are most qualified to serve the Monarchs, and finally we will go into battle to test our prowess and see if there are any weaknesses to cover for. Starting off, we have the star of the show, Caius the Shadow Monarch. This level 6 legend monster, on the turn that you tribute summon this card in attack position, lets you place a card on the field to the bottom of the owner's deck. Then if you placed a face-up monster whose original attribute is dark, you can burn your opponent for 1000 life points. However, you can't activate Caius the Shadow Monarch again for the rest of the turn. Allowing you to put any card back to the owner's deck does mean that you can send your own if you need to, and that might be good because 1000 life points is nothing to scoff at. But overall, the removal is just really nice even if it isn't a dark monster, especially if you can hit directly to the face for 2400 life points anyway. Next up, we have Lindorm the Mega Monarch. Like all the other level 8 Mega Monarchs, they can all be tribute summoned in attack position by tributing a face-up level 5 or higher monster with 1000 defense. If you have no cards in your extra deck during the turn that you tribute summon this card in attack position, your opponent chooses 2 cards on their field, and then you shuffle one of them into the deck. Do keep in mind though that they do need to have at least 2 cards on the field for this effect to activate. If not, you're just making a 2400 attack body. After that is Lindorm the Dragon Monarch. As long as you have no cards in your extra deck during the turn that you tribute summon this card in attack position, you can shuffle up to 2 cards from your opponent's graveyard back into the deck. Then you can make an opponent's face-up effect monster lose 800 attack and defense for the end of the turn. We don't talk about it a lot, but sending cards back to the deck is essentially banishing them, since Rush has no index searchers. Sure, they'll get it back eventually, especially if they're a mill deck, but removing key pieces like ritual spells from the grave means their monsters or spells that would otherwise recycle them can't do that anymore. Drak, the Dragon Vessel, can activate its effect if you have no cards in the extra deck and you mill a card. Then you can increase this card's level by 2 for the turn. If you haven't special summoned a monster this turn, you can add Lindorm the Mega Monarch or Lindorm the Dragon Monarch from the grave to the hand. So for just 1 card, you can potentially get a Mega Monarch onto the board as long as it's already in the grave. And that's it for the new Monarchs for the deck. So now we'll look at the other cards in the retinue. Like I said before, remember that the Mega Monarchs can be tribute summoned in attack position by tributing just 1 face-up level 5 or higher monster with 1000 defense. Just so I don't have to repeat myself for every new Mega Monarch. Wilhel the Mega Monarch, on the turn that you summon this in attack position, makes your opponent choose 1 card and you can destroy it. Wilhel the Wisdom Monarch, on the turn that you tribute this card in attack position, lets you look at an opponent's face-down spell trap card. If that card is a spell, you can destroy it. Zeus the Wisdom Vassal, on the turn that you normal summon this card, needs you to shuffle 2 monsters with 1000 defense from your grave to the deck. Then your opponent sets 1 spell card from their grave to the field, and you can add a level 5 or higher monster with 1000 defense from your grave to the hand. Estrom the Mega Monarch lets your opponent choose 1 monster on their field, and you can destroy 1 other card on their field instead. Estrom the Star Monarch simply lets you destroy a face-up level 6 or lower effect monster on your opponent's field. Hebe, the Star Vassal, has the same requirement as Zeus, but now your opponent can special summon a level 6 or lower effect monster from their grave to face up defense position. Then you can add a level 5 or higher monster with 1000 defense from your grave to the hand. As you might have noticed by now, the regular Monarch and their respective vassals combo well together. Zeus makes your opponent set a spell, which then Wilhel can destroy, and Hebe special summons a monster that Estrom can remove. This is cool and all, but I'll be honest, it doesn't really do much for the deck. The Mega Monarchs provide way more value, and there are just better ways of getting them out than their preferred method. Next up, we have Advanced Form. If your opponent has a monster in their grave, send up to 2 cards from your field to the grave. Then shuffle monsters from your opponent's grave into the deck equal to the number of cards sent to the grave for the requirement. Then you can add Advanced Impact or Emperor Realm from your grave to the hand. Criatura Brazo checks to see if you have no cards in your extra deck and no other monsters on the field, and you send the top 2 cards of your deck to the grave. Then you can choose a face-down spell trap card on your opponent's field and prevent its activation until the end of your opponent's next turn. Use this to stop interruptions or any battle traps so that your Monarchs can reign without worry. Royal Wisdom Guards check to see if you have 10 or more cards in your deck, and you shuffle 4 monsters with 1000 defense from your grave into the deck, except those monsters with 1200 attack, sorta like itself. Then you can draw a card and increase the card's level by 2 for the turn. Tribute Kaiser needs you to send the top card of your deck to the grave. Then you can reduce the level of an opponent's face-up level 3 through 8 effect monster by 2 for the turn. You can then also add a level 8 monster with 2400 attack and 1000 defense from your grave to the hand. This does help retrieve any Mega Monarchs from the grave, so it's a pretty good card to have. Satellite Soldier, just by milling a card, can increase the level of one face-up level 6 or lower monster on your field with 1000 defense by 2 for the turn. This is another way to turn some of those low-level monsters into suitable tributes for the Mega Monarchs. The structure deck also gives us Destroyer Golem, which is the only normal monster in the deck. I guess it's mainly for the stats, but that's really it. Plaster Scout has the ideal stats as well, but also has the continuous effect of preventing any effect damage during your opponent's turn. This actually can be helpful in a way for the Monarch mirror, especially if they use Caius as their legend monster. All-Seeing Harvey on the main phase that you normal or special summon this card lets you look at one face-down card on your opponent's field. If it's a monster with 1500 or more defense, you can also destroy it. Then we have good old Negate War Dragon. During the turn that you normal summon this card, mill 2. Then if you have a negate attack in your grave, you can make up to 3 face-up monsters on your opponent's board lose 2000 attack until the end of your opponent's next turn. This is such a strong debuffer that still sees competitive play in many different strategies. Star Replacer, if it's the only monster on your field, returns itself back into your hand and then lets you special summon a level 4 or lower monster from the grave in face-down defense position. However, now you can't special summon any more monsters from the hand or grave for the rest of the turn. If you use this card, you're aiming to summon one of your other key low-level monsters like Tribute Kaiser to return Monarchs back to the hand. And the final monster of the structure deck is Good Goo. If your opponent has 2 or more monsters on their field, send this face-up card from your field to the grave. Then you can make a level 7 or higher monster on your opponent's field lose 1000 attack and defense until the end of the turn. It does have the right stats for it to be used in this deck, and 1000 attack and defense debuff is nothing to scoff at. However, you do lose a body on the field, which I think does suck a little bit more. Now we move into the spells and traps of the deck. So let's see what new things the Monarchs got. First up is the Monarch Stormforth. You can activate this legend spell on a turn that you haven't special summoned a monster from the extra deck. Choose an opponent's monster, but if you were to tribute summon a monster, you can tribute that opponent's monster instead. But then you can't special summon any monsters from the extra deck for the turn. When this card was first announced, I saw a tweet by someone saying that they don't want to play Rush because of this card, and I honestly had to laugh, cause like, really? While this might be a bit more generic compared to some of the other cards with similar effects, it is a legend spell with no native way to retrieve it from the graveyard, and like, most other commonly used legend spells are probably more useful anyway. Obviously, you can try and build strategies around this card, I mean, sure, but come on, it's not going to be the main reason you lose to Monarchs. Invasion of the Monarch simply lets you add a monster with 2000 or 2400 attack and 1000 defense from your grave to the hand. Obviously, this stat line is like every Monarch, so it's a must-have in any Monarch-centered deck. Triumph of the Monarchs checks to see if you have no cards in your extra deck. Then you can send a monster with 2000 or 2400 attack and 1000 defense from your hand to the grave in order to draw 2 cards. You're then able to shuffle up to 2 cards from your opponent's grave into their deck. With so many ways that you can retrieve your Monarchs, this is a really good draw spell to have to gain more resources. Advanced Impact can activate when you have no monsters on the field. Send monsters from your hand to the grave whose total level is equal to the level of one face-up monster on your opponent's field. Then for this turn, if you were to tribute summon a monster, you can tribute summon that opponent's monster instead of your own. So it's similar to Stormforth, but with a way higher cost in my opinion. Enough so that I don't think it's really ideal in most decks. Emperor Realm is the Monarch field spell. You can activate this card by milling 2 cards. While this card is face-up in the field zone, face-up level 5 or higher monsters on the field with 1000 original defense gain 400 attack. Honestly, it's not a bad buff, but it's not something you want to see often in your hands. And actually in the mirror match, this effect does apply to your opponent as well, so you're going to be buffing them too. Trade-in is a generic draw spell where if you send a level A monster from your hand to the grave, you can draw 2 cards. This is pretty similar to Triumph, but without the extra utility. Remove Trap is a classic spell card that lets you check an opponent's face-down back row, and if it's a trap card, you can destroy it. And since this deck is running Negate War Dragon, it only makes sense that we get a copy of Negate Attack as well. Perseverance of the Monarchs is the newest trap card for the deck. When your opponent normal or special summons a monster, you can activate this card and then shuffle 3 monsters with 1000 defense from your grave into the deck. Then if you have no cards in your extra deck, you can destroy an opponent's face-up monster. Activate Machinations of the Monarchs when your opponent normal specials a monster while you have a face-up level 5 or higher monster with 1000 defense on the field. Then you can turn that monster to face-down defense and add a level 5 or higher monster with 1000 defense from your grave to the hand. Nativity of the Monarchs can activate when your opponent normal or special summons a level 8 or lower face-up monster, and you send a monster from your field to the grave. Then you can special summon a level 5 or higher monster with 1000 defense from your hand in attack position, and destroy one of those normal or special summon monsters. And the last card of the deck is Star Salvation Shield. When your opponent draws a card during their turn, or when your opponent normal or special summons a monster on their turn, send a monster from your field to the grave. Your opponent can then only declare 1 attack for the turn. You are also able to take control of a face-up level 9 or higher Magical Knight type fusion monster on your opponent's field with 3000 original attack. Now, with the structure deck finally laid out, we can talk about strategies and alternatives that you can use. And with so many Monarchs, which ones do you try and prioritize into the deck? Almost every deck list I've seen so far has playsets of both Lindorm and Drakh. Lindorm is good because it bounces and not destroys, which I think is the better removal overall, and Drakh can easily retrieve Lindorm from the grave later on. I've also seen decks use Wilhel and Estrom in some mix, however never 3 of each. Like I mentioned before, Wilhel's effect can just activate with 1 card on the field, whereas Estrom does need 2, which makes it a little less efficient. But there are definitely situations where either card can be useful, but it's up to you on what you feel is best. Other than that, you're looking for cards that will mill you a bunch so that you can have your Mega Monarchs in the grave. Jundi of the Dark Path is one such card. As long as you have 10 or more cards in your deck, you can mill 3. If there's an Earth monster from among the cards sent, you can draw a card and place 1 card from your hand to the bottom of the deck. While you only have 1 Earth target usually in a Monarch deck, it's mostly the mill that you're looking for. But another good card that I've seen being used is Amazing Dealer. If you have 3 or less monsters in the grave, pay 300 life points and you can mill 3 and draw 3. This happens more than you might think. And even if it doesn't, hey, it's another body on the field too. And obviously, there is the concern of the mirror match. Like I mentioned before, you probably don't want to run the field spell since it does affect your opponent's monsters as well, but it could be a side deck option for any other matchup. However, I've also seen the argument of not running any traps in the deck. The Monarch deck currently is one where you just want to have all the resources at your disposal, so a lot of the generic traps with pretty high costs might not seem worth it at all. For real, you probably just want to run the Legend Trap and nothing else. And don't get me wrong, Perseverance of the Monarchs is a good trap. But in the mirror match where Monarchs have graveyard hate in the form of Triumph, it is hard to justify. Alright, so here's the deck list I'm running with today. For Mega Monarchs, we're running 3 Wilhel and 3 Lindorm with Caius as our Legend Monster. As you can see, I have 1 copy of Lindorm the Dragon Monarch. I know quite a few decks do run 3 since the graveyard hate is good for the mirror, but I just didn't like having too many high levels in the deck. I do want to highlight this next card though, Mad Rare Aquila. For those that have played Rush for a while, they might know this card during the executing meta, but for the others, let me explain. Its ability is that if your opponent has 2 or more monsters on their field, you can send the top card of your deck to the graveyard. Then for this turn, you can attack twice. Also, you can destroy a face-up level 6 effect monster on your opponent's field, and if you destroyed a monster by this effect, this card gains an additional 600 attack for the turn. We're using this in tandem with Tribute Kaiser since it has the ability to reduce the level of an opponent's level 3 through 8 effect monster by 2. Meaning if you target a level 8 Mega Monarch, you can now reduce its level to 6 and it's able to be destroyed by Mad Rare Aquila. Other than that, it's 3 copies of Royal Wisdom Guards, 3 Drock, 3 Amazing Dealers, and yeah. For spells, it's the regular suite of cards, but I wanted some more mill, so I added the limited spell Catois Choice. If your opponent has a monster on your field, mill 3 cards, and if you have 3 or less monsters in your grave, you can add a card from your grave to the hand. As you can see, I have so much resource generation and milling that if I don't beat my opponent fast, I might just deck out. So let's see how these matches go. Turn 1, I set Trap Hole and play Pot of Duality to nab a Wisdom Guards, and then I play Amazing Dealer to try and refresh my hand. Unfortunately, still nothing great, so all I can do is just set the rest and pass. On their turn, they activate Curse of the Rising Light and play 2 Tribute Kaiser to then make Lindorm the Mega Monarch, which I then respond with Trap Hole and remove it. Unfortunately, they do have Drock and use it to get Lindorm back onto the field to force me to remove my Drock. But then Wilhel gets summoned and I remove my face-up dealer to prevent some damage, but not before Steel Soldier Gale Vinery is summoned. Thankfully, they hit tail, so no attack boost for them as they do clear the board. On my turn, I use Catois Choice to mill some cards and trade in using my Wilhel to draw 2, which then leads to my Pot of Greed where I draw another 2. Then I play Tribute Kaiser to reduce Wilhel's level to 6, which then lets me play Aquila to destroy Wilhel to gain attack, before tributing Kaiser into Caius to remove the Vinery. This lets me hit for a lot before ending the turn. On their do or die turn, my opponent uses Pot of Duality to nab a Drock, but before that activates Jund to mill some cards. Drock then gets Lindorm to then use for Triumph to draw some more. Lucky for them, they draw their own Aquila to destroy my Caius and go for the attack, leaving me at 1000 life points. But this is the end for them as I trade in Wilhel to draw 2, Triumph my other Wilhel to draw more, and now I just have game in hand. I play Kaiser and use it and Dealer to make Lindorm to remove a card before Invasion brings back my Caius, which I then use to remove the Aquila and burn for 1000. Then for the finishing touch, I tribute for Wilhel and destroy their last card before attacking for game. This next game, I had a wild start. I double trade in both Lindorm and Wilhel to basically replace my hand, and I get a Pot of Greed to use and draw more. Then I Pot of Duality to get a Wilhel, and now I get it onto the board and make a Caius to destroy the Wilhel and burn for 1000 before using Invasion to get the Wilhel back into my hand. My opponent uses Triumph to send Lindorm and activate Curse to draw some more cards and Jund to mill. They do get a Drock and return a Lindorm to play on the field and an Invasion to get another Lindorm in play. But then they have a Vinery that does hit heads, so now all their monsters are buffed and hit me for a lot. On what could be my last turn, I Triumph and pitch Wilhel and 2 Invasions to get Caius and Lindorm back into my hand. I use Amazing Dealer as tribute for Caius and summon Aquila for her double attack. Caius destroys a Lindorm and I use it to tribute for my own Lindorm to remove the other one on their field. I clear the board and with only a Trap Hole to my name, this could be it. Curse comes in clutch for them again as they flip my Lindorm, but it looks like they don't have any other play after that, so they actually just set 4 and pass. Now I play Duality to get Jest, but I forgot I can't activate her, so I just flip my Lindorm and go in for the attack with Drock and Aquila, riding on the bet that my opponent also doesn't run a lot of traps, and thankfully that was the case as I get exact lethal. GG's. Monarchs are strong. You're going to see many different variants of the deck during your time dueling, and I'm still not sure what the best deck is out of all of them. If you like playing the deck, have fun. And if you don't, hopefully you can at least side in some destructive and defensive traps. People joked about the magical handcuffs, but hey, if it works, it works. Thanks for watching another episode of Rush Review. If you enjoyed what you saw, please like and subscribe to the channel. If you want to see a deck covered, let me know in the comments and I'll try and get to it. I've had a few requests come in already, but I promise to try and get most of them soon. Other than that, thank you so very much for watching, and I will see you all next time. Peace.